Welcome to Cut the Crop, keeping you in the know about everything you grow. Researchers, growers and other interesting folk delivering insights and information on topics ranging from agronomy to profitability. Brought to you by the Foundation for Arable Research.
Hello and welcome to Cut the Crop. I'm Anna Heslop and today I have two far guests. We've got Owen Gibson and Richard Chynoweth. Welcome.
Welcome.
And we're going to have a catch up on how the far year has been going with regards to research in Canterbury in particular, what sorts of issues the research team have been facing, what they've been doing about it, and I'm sure some of these will be quite familiar to you as growers as well. So we'll start off with the start to this growing season. Owen, what sort of start did we have?
Well, I think everything stemmed from late harvest. A very wet period over last harvest saw difficulties in getting contractors on site, especially at our Chertsey site, to get cultivation started. Everyone was still in harvest gear, which was also compounded by staffing issues from last season. So they couldn't get staff to run tractors in some organisations. For us at Chertsey, this was a problem when we're trying to get the cultivation trial, the long-term establishment trial underway. So as we're a lot later we went into a perennial ryegrass this season. We're a lot later getting that into the ground. And when we did, the conditions weren't exactly right, and which did see problems arise, especially around direct drilling into high residue content.
So you were talking earlier about hairpinning?
Yeah, so that's actually what we saw, quite a lot of hairpinning. We're direct drilling into a 12-tonne wheat crop from last season with straw residues still on the ground. We did bale most of the residue off, but still had a lot on there. So when we come in with a dedicated sort of disc, we used a John Deere 750A drill. We did have quite a lot of hairpinning, not enough to fail a crop or anything, but when we saw all the other factors coming into it, really exacerbated the problem. So we actually, in the end, had to terminate the perennial ryegrass that we'd planted because it was just we weren't happy of the establishment we achieved and what we're trying to achieve out of that long-term trial of seeing the carbon and N ratios in the soil, so we thought we'd start again. So the wet season proved difficult with a lot of issues. So when we drilled, it was quite moist, and so it left an open slot, which resulted in slugs being able to feed pretty much directly on the seed. Even though we did apply 2 rounds of slug baits over it, we still had a lot of damage. But that was confounded on top of issues with the hairpinning and not getting great seed soil contact as well.
So what's it looking like now?
Still not amazing. And we also, when we were looking at it, we think we were getting some herbicide residual from last season's pre-emerge herbicides, especially for grass. Particularly the grass-killing herbicides, which resulted in seed dying off or plants dying off. And you could see that over the early season that they were there and then they just keep disappearing. So we decided we terminated a crop and we wanted to keep ryegrass for what we're trying to achieve. So we went in with annual ryegrass was early spring planted, but we're still seeing issues in the direct drill treatments.
And so it's like perfect for them that they've had, it was wet summer for the slugs that then came relatively dry. And then when we planted, the slugs came back and they've really been there the whole way through the season just to finish off those struggling plants.
So, Richard, slugs, what about our other old friends, grass grubs? How have they been treating you?
Yeah, the site always has always has grass grub in the background. But for the last sort of 3-4 years, they've been increasing in numbers. And yeah, we had areas that were probably in excess of 200 grass grub a square metre this season.
Can you remember the formula for grass grub damage?
Formula for grass grub damage?
The threshold?
The threshold for grass grub damage? Well, if you're trying to establish autumn sown crop, that's effectively one grass grub to maybe one 2 grass grub to 1 seed. So you're asking for trouble in autumn soil cereals and at those populations. And ryegrass, you're just asking for more trouble really than wheat. There's less vigour there in the early parts of life. I would expect if you've got any more than about 70 a square metre, which there's 30 spade squares a square metre, so a couple of grass grub a square metre, and you're starting to get into trouble. The less seeds you're planting, the more at risk things will be. So crops like carrots and that sort of thing, where there's less plants per square metre, the risk is even higher. So they are always there on those free draining soils. Chertsey just seems to be heaven for them in a lot of ways, where they can move freely in the soil. There's nice fibrous grass or clover roots there for them all year round. And did we lose any trials this year? I don't think we lost any to grass grub, but we had a pretty intensive insecticide program. So that's a positive. We have in the past lost trials where grass grub have just made things too uneven. But I think we're looking at trying to manage them from biological means for the next couple of years. So trying to get some Serratia bacteria into the soil, back into the system to try and keep them in an equilibrium where they hopefully will be at a lower population. So that'll take us 2 or 3 years probably to build up a population of that. And
so
hopefully,
is there a reason why they've been building up over the last 3 or 4 years, or is it just literally climate and environment and weather patterns?
They tend to go in cycles, but the last couple of years have been perfect in December. So there's been a December rainfall late in December around Christmas time, and that encourages or allows the eggs to hatch and larvae to develop. So often the eggs are laid in the top layer of the soil, and it's a dry summer where they desiccate and don't actually hatch. That can cause them quite big issues. Likewise, we did use some BioShield at the site probably about 2010, and like the effects of that might be wearing off. When you get drought and bits and pieces for consecutive years, that's a Serratia bacteria that dies off as the population of grass grub disappears. And it might be that we've just gone through that boom and bust type cycle, and we're heading upwards at the moment, which a lot of people in Canterbury are facing the same thing, and the grass grub are just starting to fly, or the adults are just starting to fly now. Be pay to keep an eye out on how many there are relative to last year.
What is the situation, remind me, with the synthetic chemicals for grass grub? Where are we at or not at?
We've got a couple of years of diazonal still up our sleeve. And then that's going to disappear, I think, 2026 or 27. And at that point, we will be reliant on chlorpyrifos as the organophosphate, so the active in Suscon Green, and then seed treatments. So the neonicotinoid seed treatments will be our only real options. Other than that, we'll be looking at biological options that, I'm confident in a couple of years we'll have a few on the market that will do the job, but they won't necessarily do the job as we know the insecticides currently. They'll be a long-term project.
Interesting work, though.
Very interesting, yes. So hopefully we can get that underway at Chertsey, and if we can keep the population in check, because you need a few grass grub there for those bacteria to survive and live on. Otherwise, they'll die out, and then the pathogens die out.
And then the next grass grub flies in and lays eggs, and away we go again.
Exactly. Yep.
Speaking of flying in, bird damage, Owen.
So for us, we just started in the last couple of days getting bird damage in the autumn barley. So we've netted 2 barley crops now so far. We had lasers in the field to just keep the damage to a minimum, which have actually done a good job. They've done a lot better than I was expecting, because it's not a lot of food around for the birds now. They're just probably coming out of nesting, but right into feeding up. But we had to net them like in a small scale where we wouldn't be able to rely solely on lasers or gas guns to protect it. So nets are going on. They're just a constant problem. They really are. And I'd love to have an answer to how we can really control them properly, but it's something we're still trying to work on. And using every device possible we have to either keep them away or give us time to do other means of protection, as in netting in these areas.
Yeah, but it's key that you don't rely on one thing, Like you've got to, birds are, they're smart enough to get used to something. Yeah. So you can't rely on a laser and then without having something else up your sleeve, or they get used to a gas gun and just jump up and it goes off. Yeah. And
I think having a not the mindset of one product will do everything, and like being flexible. So some years you may have to net, it's the only option. If a populations are so big that you're not going to be able to control them with any other product. So I think that is an important message to take, is, saying that works one year is not always going to work the next. So it's been flexible. Okay,
so the other thing that's high on people's mind, and FAR keeps telling people, don't put on any more N on your crops than you need, but how much N was actually out there in the soil this year after a wet winter?
It was 20 kilograms at our Chertsey site, and not much more at Chertsey Farm when we measured, and that's just post-winter when we're taking those soil measurements. So not a lot, but then when we did use the PMN test to work out what was going to mineralise throughout the season, we were reducing inputs, I think it was by 60, 70 kilograms of nitrogen. So it is worthwhile to take into account. But the last two seasons have been very, very low compared to usual. And I think the high rainfall events we're seeing over winter, we're seeing at Chertsey Farm in Lincoln, we had a really good trial with short-term cover crops. Coming out of the winter, we saw sample post-harvest, and we had 70 kilograms up to 90 kilograms of nitrogen sitting in the soil with no crop, just fallow ground. By the end of winter, that was gone. And so there's only one way for it to go, and that is down. Whereas we used oats to catch that and then grow an okay crop. We didn't apply any more synthetic nitrogen, but we baled that off, and now we've gone into a maize crop.
So that's just saving that leaching.
Mineral N values around the countryside were relatively uneven. Like there was some high ones and some low ones, and we just happened to have very low numbers at our sites. I think that potentially led us into we've got a few crops that are quite thin relative to other years that haven't tilled out quite as well. And that we did have nitrogen go on in August, I think, from memory. Maybe we didn't have quite enough nitrogen go on in that early part of the growing season. Where the canopies, they've obviously had enough tillers, but they haven't had enough time and then probably to release buds from the bottom to form quite enough seed heads and tillers that are going to go through and produce that yield. So maybe something that's also in combination with water logging. And also the grass grub that they're just ticking away in there, that we haven't been able to access maybe as much soil as normal, and the wet might have been something to do with that.
Like a great year for crops. So speaking again about that N, have you had any problems getting hold of fertiliser?
Yes, like especially some compound fertilisers going into maize crop that we've put in that. We've got maize at Chertsey and Lincoln at Chertsey Farm. Plan was originally put Activa in, but there's been problems with getting supply, especially in the South Island. I think they've had more availability to it in the North Island, but that just changed the makeup of our base fertiliser to get the required amount of nutrients into that base fertiliser, and then also the starter fertiliser we're putting down the spout, we're just going to DAP. We definitely make it work, but it's just, there's always an issue with getting tanks sorted. So there's plenty of options. You got to just mix and match what you can and what you have available. Or you have to be a bit more onto it and order a wee bit earlier, you could say, for some. But it's just changed the makeup of the way we applied our fertiliser program to our maize crops. But we've seen it not just in fertiliser, either like in chemicals, there's still, supply limitations. I think we're still getting some of this overshoot from the COVID, shipping delays, shortages in docks. But it's definitely not as bad as it was. But I think it's something that everyone should be mindful of, that you can have these products when you want them, not available. So if there is something you really need for next season, it's a good idea if you have the ability to get in and pre-order, or if you got storage, you can have stuff waiting there, and then you know that you're set.
So are we up against other countries trying to get hold of this stuff, Richard?
I just had that thought that Australia's having quite a wet season for Australia with the flooding, and you don't wish that on anybody that some of them are going through in Australia at the moment. But they're likely to be using more glyphosate, and for their summer fallows and trying to control grass weeds that are really difficult in crop. So it's highly likely that a lot of our shipping comes via Australia, that we're likely to be competing with them. For the space on those boats, as well as where does it get offloaded? Does it make its way to a New Zealand port or not? So that's I think that for products like that, growers should be looking to order that if they can now, and get it here, so that avoid some of those earlier season issues that could arise.
What else has been going on down there? Before we get on to the very exciting topic of crops next week, but other issues that you've been hearing about from growers, perhaps?
Well, there's lots of irrigation being applied at the moment. The season's been a challenging one where the dry has really crept up on people. It hasn't necessarily been hot and sunny. It's just been cool, and it hasn't been the rain hasn't been falling in a lot of places. So that dry is definitely creeping up, and might have taken a number of people by surprise.
I think also with the dry, just to add to that, Richard, is we've actually gone through quite a cool spring. And so that has actually made us, a lot of crops have gone in later than they would have. Not just like maize, we didn't sow that till quite late because, our temperatures, we were still having frosts in mid-Canterbury till quite early, right till the sort of mid-October. The soil temperatures did start coming up, and then we just had to look at that unseasonable snowstorm that we had, snow on New Brighton Beach in October. So
it's not necessarily rounding up to be a wonderful harvest.
It's been a challenging season to date, but what happens between now and mid-January will determine a lot of it. So we'll hope for some sunshine and a much better harvest than last year.
Okay, so the other big thing that's coming up is crops, and it's just going to be on Wednesday. You two are very involved with getting it organised on the site end. How are things looking there, and what are people going to see? We've just been talking about how things have gone on the ground late. There's been a few hiccups. So what stage will the crops be at when people see them next week?
I'd say the autumn wheats will be just really early flowering, maybe, or before head emergence. Obviously, crops are 2 weeks earlier than they have previously been. But the site's looking great. I think it's going to be a real spectacle. This year we have the sponsors paddocks out the back. Everything's looking great, and there's some good displays. So I think it's going to be a great day.
No, our site looks really good. I guess we'll have some tall fescue that's flowering, so that could cause a hay fever for a few people. That we've already had a couple of people comment on that just driving past. So that's that's well out in flower, and the site is looking really good. So some of the plots and bits and pieces are a little bit skinny. But there's some good grass grub differences from different treatments and a trial there. Number of different things around herbicides that chalk and cheese, some of them that got heaps of grass growing through some cereal plots and things like that. Overall, I think it's looking pretty positive.
Yep, and there's a whole range of talks to go on, from biopesticides to grass grub to maize. Yeah, so I think there's something there for everyone. Yeah.
And you're saying the sponsors' plots are looking pretty good too?
I think so. Everyone's really got on board and trying to push the boat out. Sometimes it makes it difficult trying to organise it all, but I really enjoy the challenge, and Fast Staff have done a great job getting it all ready, as well as the contractors we use on site. So it's going to be a great day. Hopefully it's not 120-kilometre northwest.
No, it's going to be a lovely, calm, warmish day. Thanks very much, Owen and Richard. And listeners, remember, if you have any problems on farm with your crops, you can get in touch at any time. Hopefully we'll see a lot of you at crops on Wednesday, but in the meantime, have a great day on the farm.
Thanks for tuning in to Cut the Crop, presented to you by FAR. If you'd like to know more about any of the topics discussed or have any suggestions for future topics, go to www.cutthecrop.co.nz.